ボイスであなたの成果が変わる。同じ大学に通っていた友人のアミを連れてきました。相手の声が聞きづらいだとか、どれぐらいの声を出せばちゃんとウェブを通して相手に伝わるかだとか、声の出し方、ボイスっていうところに注目した動画を配信していきたいと思いますので。
Authority speaks slowly, and when they do, they sound more confident.
皆さんこんにちは。ショッタロこと K2 の板谷翔太郎です。今日はですね、ゲストに私が大学時代にですね、同じ大学に通っていた友人のアミを連れてきました。アミはですね、クラシカルボーカリストということで、オペラの歌を歌ったりだとか、英語の先生をしながらですね、今日本に住んでいる、私の友人の一人です。なぜアミを今日呼んだかというと、 IT 業界、今リモートワーク非常に増えてきてます。お客様、それから社内の打ち合わせも全てオンラインでリモートでやる状況なんですけれども、なかなかこのウェブで打ち合わせをするときっていうのはたくさんの課題があって、相手の声が聞きづらいだとか、どれぐらいの声を出せばちゃんとウェブを通して相手に伝わるかだとか、おそらく同じような課題を抱えている人も、たくさんいると思います。なので今日は声の出し方、ボイスっていうところに注目した、動画を配信していきたいと思いますので、ぜひ見てください。じゃあアミ、よろしくお願いします。
はい、アミです。よろしくお願いします。
アメリカ出身だね。
アメリカ出身です。
はい。付き合いとしてはもう10年以上かな。16年。あっという間だね。はい。で大学、アミは大学の時に音楽の勉強してたよね。確か
そう、音楽、クラシック音楽とか、音楽理論、オペラ、そういうのトレーニングをもらいました。
でその後にシハスと卒業して、カリフォルニアの大学院に行って、
そう、大学院はカリフォルニアと、あとはもう一つマイアミ。
そんなに勉強したっけ？歌を歌う、
声楽とか、あともう舞台に出るというのか、演技とかのも受けまして、
でそこからね、アミが英語の先生として一歩踏み出したのが、発音のところから、ね、英語を教えていくっていうところで今活躍してるね。日本語上手なんだろうね。Let's switch to English because I wanna get your opinion. Okay. For the introduction, I talked about since I'm working in the IT industry, IT company, since Japanese government is pushing us to work remotely because of the COVID-19, lots of people having meetings through online, through the web, and sometimes, including myself, when I have a meeting with my client, I'm not sure, if my voice is clear, and sometimes I struggle to hear what the other person is saying because of the online. It's not just about the Wi-Fi or the tools, but it's also about how we try to speak, I think. And I think it is a good timing to look at this kind of skill. Yeah, so I want to ask you about this. Okay. Yeah. And my impression is that voice is very important to give an impression to the other person. Japanese people, maybe including myself, sometimes our tone of the voice is very, very flat. So it doesn't show the emotional things, which is kind of boring. Yeah. But to give a good impression, is there anything the voice can do?
Absolutely. There are a variety of reasons why Japanese people have a tendency to speak flat. I think it starts with television, like NHK, for example. Okay. They listen to a lot of people speaking very calmly and in a straight tone on television, and then from grade school, from elementary school onwards, for a time as well, I taught as an ALT here, and so I worked in elementary school, and children would learn to speak calmly and softly, and then immediately in the classroom just big voice and lots of energy. So that gets toned down over time. So they go to the workplace and they forget that child energy that they had, that they need to keep people's attention. And I think one thing that is particular even among students that I've taught is, it's as you say, they speak too flat. There's not enough energy coming through the voice as they speak.
Right.
And so people lose interest. And sometimes people think that they don't care. And that can really deeply affect your image.
Is it about because of the Japanese education system? Like in the US, does teacher tell kids to speak quietly in the class, or
In my experience, the teacher will tell us to use inside voices. But notice in Japan, they will say something like shizukani. Or they might say something like koi ga okisugi, urusai, those kind of things. The language that Japanese people use indicates being quiet and softly speaking. And society in Japan over the last 100, 200 years has changed to really focus on this softening. So yes, education does play a part. Is it always bad? No, it's not always bad. But in some ways, the good parts of it change the behaviors so much that now people can sometimes be too quiet and too soft-spoken. And in the US, we have less of that problem because our society, we use the term inside voice, which means you can speak loudly, just not too loud. But in Japan, it's be soft.
I see.
So the difference in thinking, there's a cognitive way of thinking.
Yeah, that's true.
Versus in America, okay, I can talk about this level. Is this okay? Because 全然違うなんか音量ですね。Very, very different volume. So I think these slight psychological differences are what cause people in society here to speak too softly, too plain.
I see. That's interesting. Okay, so maybe you're the expert, to talk about Japanese language, English as a language. The difference between these languages. I think English has more tones and rhythm. Yeah.
Well, English has more violent tones.
Violent tones.
When you talk to a Japanese person, いいんじゃない? いいんじゃない? Some people say いいんじゃない? いいじゃない?
Yeah.
And so the tones go up and down like this. But in English, you say, it's fine. Oh, it's okay. It's great. すごい激しいでしょ? And so the tone is more stressful. And so it's how can I say that this is a very difficult thing for Japanese people to learn, not because they can't, but because they've never done it before. So, and it doesn't just affect their ability to speak English, but their own language too. At our school, we have students who study English pronunciation to improve their Japanese because they want to be able to speak more clearly over.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. What kind of training?
Basically, it just involves awareness of the muscles in your mouth.
顔の筋肉っていうところを意識することが大事と。
そう。In our school, we use these things called mouth and tongue positions.
Mouth and tongue positions. Okay.
And for the most part, our students who come, they become aware. 意識がなってくる。あんまり日本語で舌が動かないですね。in Japanese なんか例えば英語の ですね。なんかそんなになんかそううまい。It's not so it doesn't exist in Japanese, and to make your tongue do that is very difficult. Japanese singers do have to raise their muscle awareness, which is why a lot of them
muscle awareness.
Exactly. You have to be aware of the muscles in your face. So the muscles can include your tongue, your lips, your jaw. All these move differently. 日本語でそんなに動かなくてもいいですね。こういうままでずっと喋ったらまだわかるよね。全然口動かない。
You cannot do that in English?
In English, it's not so easy. You have to move a little bit. So Japanese has in terms of communicativeness, Japanese pronunciation is essentially easier at first to learn. In Japanese pronunciation gets harder as you get better, but English pronunciation is phenomenally more difficult for Japanese.
Yeah, definitely. I see. Okay. So after learning about like muscle awareness, like still like I wanna ask you about the 人を引きつける話し方, like how to get the attention by speaking from the other person. So speak clearly, speak loudly. Speak loudly, I don't think it's a right thing to say, but
speak loudly is confusing because let's be realistic. When you speak loudly, then you talk like this.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is annoying.
これでも確かにイライラする感じの話し方ね。
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but if you talk with authority, and another thing that is very
Authority,
important.
okay.
Another thing is authority speaks slowly. People who are in a state of power, people who are gaining attention, like you're listening to me right now. And I'm speaking quite slowly. Authority would be,
right? Like it's a power.
In this case, it means power. Speaking from a higher place.
Higher place, okay.
And so, but speaking with authority means speaking slowly. People who are in a position of power can speak slower. And when they do, they sound more confident. If I talk like this in English, and I move my mouth and I'm speaking really quickly like this, suddenly I don't sound so sure, so confident, you know?
Right, that's true.
Maybe I'm a little
Lack
nervous.
of confidence.
日本語でもこのままで早くみんながちょっと心配になってしまうよね。どうすればいいかな、なんか不安になっても同じ言葉で不安になっても大丈夫です。このスピードで喋ったら問題ないでしょ。わかりやすくみんなが私の
優しい話し方
のことを聞きたいんですね。So you have to speak and be aware of the speed that you're talking as well. The energy, the speed, volume, yes, speaking loudly is fine. But もしかしてこれでもそんなに悪くないでしょ。
確かに。
声が低いなのに、声の音量が低いなのに、まだ聞いてるでしょ。So
スピードとエネルギーが大事ですね。話すときにね。じゃあ単純にこの口を口角上げてクリアに話せばいいってもんじゃなくって、やっぱりそのエモーショナルな部分っていうか、そのスピードだとか、あとはまあその自分のこのエネルギーを声に乗せて伝えようとするっていうところが大事っていう。アミ、日本語で話してるときなんか他に気づいたことある？
私が
By speaking Japanese, comparing with when you speaking English, what changes you?
When you speak any language, even for you, I'm sure, when you speak English, sometimes it feels different than when you speak Japanese, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to use words and you have to be aware of things culturally. For example, in Japanese, you don't say anata, you don't say kimi, you don't say omae, you don't say those words. They're rude, you know. But in English, you say you. You know, how are you? And it's like, and some people, you know, we don't say like Ami wa or Shotaro wa. In Japanese, you say Shotaro wa. But in English, I don't say how is Shotaro. I don't say that to you because that's weird.
Right.
So my mind has to change, and I have to put on this polite filter. 礼儀正しいフィルター. You know, sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's tiring.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, in a way it's tiring, but it's fun to communicate in a different way, I would say.